Keith Ferrazzi is the world's foremost expert in relationship development, with a deep understanding of your business and the broader marketplace in which it operates. Executive conferences, Fortune 500 companies, Ivy League schools have all learned from Keith's expertise in sales, leadership, performance, and team building. Thousands of readers and audience members have improved their profitability and enhanced their business by implementing Keith's concepts. Keith never leaves an audience without a handful of actionable next steps, which they can apply when they walk out of the room to your business and their lives. Keith Ferrazzi is one of the rare individuals to have discovered the essential formula for reaching the top, a powerfully balanced combination of marketing acumen and a remarkable ability to connect. Keith Ferrazzi is the #1 best-selling author of Never Eat Alone and Who's Got Your Back? Get your audience on their feet and building deeper relationships right in the room. Keith will help your organization develop stronger relationships with customers and prospects and bond closely within and across divisions and functional lines. Ferrazzi has been widely recognized by his peers and has authored numerous articles for leading national publications, including Forbes, Inc., The Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and the Harvard Business Review. Keith Ferrazzi changes lives through relationships. His dynamic, interactive presentations ignite audiences and provide the tools for continued transformative change in any organization.
Let me introduce all of you now to Keith Ferrazzi. Keith?
Thank you. Thank you. And how many of you could imagine standing up here and looking out on this audience and how frightening and intimidating that could possibly be for any of us? But I gotta tell you, it's actually not as frightening, as intimidating as I might have imagined, because I know for a fact what I'm about to do is the easiest job in the world. It's the easiest job in the world because there isn't anything I'm about to say that you don't know. Because everything that you do and everything this organization does is hardwired to connect and to be successful. Relationships are the core to your success. If you understand what I'm saying, just tell me, I get it. Now, if that's all true, then ultimately the question is, what does that really mean by relationships? Because you've got a powerful company, and you've got a powerful set of individuals sitting down around you. And the reason I wanted to bring these lights up is because what you need to do to be successful in this world is sitting right around you. And I don't know if that emotionally sinks in yet, but if I do anything with you today, I'm going to try to bring that to life for each and every one of you. That everything that you need in these troubled economic times, everything that you need in your personal troubled times, no matter what they are, everything that you need to be the great person that you were put on this planet to do, to be successful, to be powerful, to be your full potential, doesn't actually start and come from internally. It starts and comes from your willingness to let other people in. All right, now that I got the light up, I want to learn a little bit about you. I want you to write one of the following shapes down as I blurt out 4 shapes. I want you to write one of them down, and I want you to question or judge as to why I wrote this one, or why I wrote that one, or what that one means, etc. Just whatever comes to the top of your mind, I want you to write it down. And it's gonna say something to all of us, but I don't want you to think about it too much. You ready? All right, so here they are. There's 4 of them. A circle, a triangle, a square, or a Z. Circle, triangle, square, or Z. Write it down. Don't even think. Write it down. Some of you are staring at me and not writing anything down. If you can't think of something, then that actually says something about you too. Does everybody have something written down? All right. Circles, raise your hands. Holy cow. Not a surprise. I'd say it's almost 60-70% of the audience. Circles are out-of-the-box thinkers. It's good. Circles tend to embrace change in organizations. They tend to embrace people in organizations and people in the world generally. Now, the interesting thing about circles is partially in choosing a circle, you have specifically omitted not choosing something else. What you've chosen not to choose is you don't choose anything that sort of has a sharp edge or a pointy side or something that boxes you in any way. So all of you circles have specifically avoided those kind of things. They make you a little claustrophobic. As a result, you're all sort of deeply individuals who are individualistic but very disorganized. So Tom, we got some serious problems here. You got about 60-70% of the folks that... All right, triangles, raise your hands. Okay, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up, keep them up. Anybody sitting next to a triangle, just be careful. Triangles will do anything to get to the top of an organization as quickly as possible. The most ruthlessly blind individuals in the room. Just to make sure you get their business cards before you leave, all right? No, all right. Now, squares, raise your hands. Nothing to be ashamed of. This is, by the way, stand up if you're a square. Stand up. Stand up. There are so few of you in this room that all of you circles, look at them, point them out, recognize them. You desperately need to partner with these people. All right, you can sit down. These are the individuals that have rigor and analytics, and they have process. They embrace that sort of thing. I mean, it's all great. It's fantastic stuff in their organizations. Plus, the world needs accountants, too. It's all good. And then there's the Z's. Don't raise your hand if you're a Z. I would never do that in front of your work colleagues, peers, and associates. Oh my gosh, no. Because Z's are just preoccupied with booze and sex. Now, by the way, if any of you would now like to change and become a Z, raise your hands. There you go. You will be a heck of a lot more fun at the dance party tonight. Look, when I wrote these two books, I wrote them with a very simple message in mind that we're going to talk about today. And the message is very simple, and that it is that you can't get there alone. Let's let that sink in for a second. You can't get there alone. I don't care where there is for you. I don't care what your dreams, your aspirations, your hopes. I don't care what your unique and specific fears are, but no matter where you want or what you want to achieve, it's with and through the people in your life that will happen. But we got a problem. We've got a problem in society that we're now also fixated on having so much to do and so little time to do it. How many people in this room would say that they are slightly, if not significantly, overwhelmed without enough time to do all that you have to do? Just say amen. Amen. And the problem is that in today's day and age, we get so focused on the transaction. How many of us take the time to connect? And recognizing that time, that instant, and one of the things we're going to talk about today is that the time that we don't connect can be transformed, that same 2-second moment that we choose not to connect, but instead to transact. That same 2-second moment where we decide to give a compliment that may or may not be authentic or true, but we know that it works and it's a good trick to get somebody to arrest their attention. We haven't even looked to see whether their lipstick is any good. We just know that saying their lipstick is good is a good way to start. But every moment that we take to transact with your mindset, with your heart, with your decision to not transact, but to connect, with your decision that you want to lead a life a little differently, with your decision that you want to have some moments in your life when you actually exhale, that those decisions in life can go from transaction to transformation. Everything that we do can't be verbal, it's got to be felt. You all have to feel what I'm saying and you'll never believe it. If I'm going to expect or even hope that when you leave here you do something different, you got to do something different in here and like it and connect with it, and then you're going to say, great, I want to do a little bit more of that. And then at break you're going to start practicing and doing some of it, and then when you're done with break you're going to be doing it at dinner, you're going to go home and you're going to try it a little bit more. So our ability to taste success is the beginning of a transformation, to go from transaction to transformation. So with that in mind, I want you to do something very simple. What I want you to do is I want you to find one person at your table, just somebody you're sitting next to, and I want you to judge them. Oh, come on, come on, come on, come on, come on. Now, listen. You know what's funny about this murmuring is that if I didn't say that, you would have done it anyway. I'm just giving you permission. All right? Now, when you're finished judging them just for a second, I want you to then introduce yourself to them, okay? So it's going to take 2 minutes. Go for it. Make an introduction. What just happened here was what happens typically when you reach out to the world and you're making introductions, all right? Number one, you looked at somebody and you sized them up. You thought to yourself, is this person interesting? Is this person smart? Is this person talented? Does this person have a big stick up their back end? Whatever. You sat back and you judged them. We are all the perpetuators and the victims of prejudice every day. There's not a single person in this room that hasn't been inappropriately prejudged. There isn't a single person in this room that hasn't been the perpetuator of prejudice. I say that everybody in this room has been the victim of prejudice. I mean, even look at Tom, that white cracker, you know, that Tom is. This guy has been the victim of prejudice. And you know why I know that? I told this story before. Just recognize that every time somebody's in front of you, there is a potential for a soul to touch. And guess whose soul that is? It's not theirs, it's yours. Every time you see somebody, you've got to make a choice to care. You've got to make a choice to care. And oddly enough, relationships in this world is a choice. It's a choice that you can decide right now, the next person that I talk to, I'm going to care. It's that simple. It doesn't take you any longer to choose to care than it did to choose to get that last introduction over with because the guy on stage told me to do it. I want you to go back to that same person that, in a moment, you guys are very quick to act. When I say go, I want you to go back to that same person and I want you to practice a simple exercise. I just want you to look them in the eyes, and I want you to say to yourself, I'm going to care. I am going to care. And I guarantee you that simple act of looking at someone's eyes and deciding to care will get you 90% of the way there. The second thing that you've got to do is you've got to get them to tell you their story. What do I mean by that? You all know how the power of story. Story is, as a friend of mine calls it, emotional transportation. You know, somebody says, you know, what are you really passionate about? Oh, my kids. Great. You don't really care. It's like you just checked a box. But get them to tell you their story. Tell me about that. Tell me why you're so passionate about your children. Tell me a story. Tell me about their last birthday. Tell me about the last holiday that you experienced with them. Tell me what they did in the last couple of weeks that made you proud or scared or interested. Tell me a story. What you're doing and what I want all of us to do in this world, and this will transform your life. If you take nothing away from the time that we're going to spend together going forward, if you do nothing else, but just remember this, your jobs in life are to walk around the world, creating an environment around yourself that invites people in to want to have a better relationship with you. Your job in this world is to walk around the world creating an environment that invites people in to want to have a better relationship with you. God, I look out on this couple of thousand people and I just realize that if every one of you in this room were to begin to do that, the impact and the touch that it would have on your worlds and our society for that matter. Our churches aren't as full as they used to be. Our community centers aren't as full as they used to be. People don't join clubs. They go into gyms and they put iPods on and they isolate themselves. Where is our community? Naturally, as human animals, and we're animals, we are hardwired and designed to work in community. Back in the olden days, they were called tribes. In the way olden days, when it was like 70,000 years ago, and there were only 12 of those tribes in Africa. And those groups, if they didn't connect and come together, they wouldn't survive. As a result, as humans, we are hardwired to our DNA, to our core, to connect, to serve, to help each other be successful. Because if we didn't, we were thrown out, we'd be eaten by mountain lions by ourselves. So we got to connect. And we long for it. When you do connect, that's your time that I say you feel an exhale. And somebody actually makes you feel like you belong. That's a powerful invitation. I want you to ask somebody, what is your passion? And as they start to tell you, I want you to say, what is your story? Tell me your story about that passion, your children, your hobbies, your whatever. Tell me your story. And I want you to share, and I want both of you to get good time. So you're only going to get 4 minutes to do this. You got 2 minutes each. Go for it. All right. Now, 3 things just happened that made me know that nature just kicked in. 1, much more difficult to get you back. 2, your body language. You leaned into each other. The last introduction, your space from each other was further apart. And your volume levels were higher. As a room, the buzz was higher. So, how'd that feel? Would anybody be willing, and I apologize, it's so much easier for me if I'm walking around with a mic in my hand, but would anybody be willing to take one of the mics and just tell me how that experience was different from the first introduction? Just raise your hand. The lady in the yellow over there.
Bridget's been working for Avon for 2 years, and until a few minutes ago, I truly did not know that much about her. And her passion, as mine, is family, first and foremost. Our jobs are second. I began to understand her lifestyle more, what her family and her religion truly mean to her.
Okay.
And I did not know those things before.
Thank you, Sharon. How many people in this room, as the other person began to share with them, began to care more? By the way, don't raise your hands. You will traumatize the people around you if the answer is no. But the whole point is that in the process of sharing like this, we get drawn into people. We get to know who they really are. And I'm not saying the judgment or the prejudgment or the prejudice is always bad. Very often it's just neutral. It's like non-existent. It's like, here's another person that's doing another thing and yada yada. But all of a sudden, there's a human that emerges in front of you. And that's the power. Anybody else have a quick story? Yeah, right here. What's your name, ma'am? Hi, Tanya.
Hi.
Keith.
Hi, Keith, everybody. I had the pleasure...
Stand up. Oh, come on.
Stand up!
Yeah, I'm taking your chair from you. Stand up. There we go.
Okay. I had the
Tanya.
pleasure of meeting Connie, and we did our introduction, like you said, the first time. And then something happened the second time. We started talking about our grandmothers. So we both started crying, saying how they had influenced our lives. So during those tears, I tried to pull back. I took my hand back because I guess I was wanting to go back into the shell. And Connie grabbed it, and she held it. So we made a connection right at that moment. Because as you mentioned earlier, we try to go back, we work out, we're in the little world. And she
Connie,
made me come out.
So Connie had your back.
She had my back.
She had your back. Oh, thank you. How many people found that the people they were just speaking to, I'm just going to stand right here, okay? How many people found that the people they were just speaking to had more in common than you expected in terms of you sharing with each other? Right. So guess what that says? That says, get over yourselves, you're not unique. But I mean that. I'm serious, because all of a sudden, the people that we wouldn't expect because of our prejudgments to have anything in common with, here's the good news. Y'all got everything in common with each other because you're all humans. And you all struggle, and you all suffer, and you all have joy, and you all have resonance, and you all have dreams, and you all believe somehow, and I think this is deep down inside programmed in us somewhere in our souls, we all believe somewhere we were put on earth for a purpose. And unfortunately, as we get older sometimes, that purpose begins to get a little further away from us sometimes. And we make compromises and we move on, etc. But I promise you, here's the promise of today. Other than the direction of creating that relationship around you, if you don't listen or believe anything, believe this. And that is that if you want to begin to claim your destiny, if you want to begin to claim the power, the potential that each of you has in this world for yourselves as individuals, it's going to take a Connie every once in a while to pull your hand back. We've got to do this for each other. Amen. The 4 words that define all great relationships in our lives are vulnerability. We've got to connect with people to the point of vulnerability to be truly trusted. Isn't that odd? I'm saying to a group of business executives that I'm saying vulnerability is the power of connectivity. To be really intimate, meaning intimacy as connectivity, social bonding, friends, concern, care. You've got to be vulnerable. This is a progression. that starts, as you'll see, with you as an individual being authentic yourself. I'm talking about truly, authentically connecting in real relationships. And yes, it's a great way to sell, but more importantly, it is an awesome way to live. And that's what I want you to connect with. Vulnerability and intimacy, that's the core. That's the core of what we're talking about. That's the one word, vulnerability. Number two, generosity. The great news about all of this is that you have been given the jobs of service. Service to the folks around you. And reaching out to the world and being of service and being generous. We're going to give you some ideas about how to be generous. Because that's the way you get people's attention. Unfortunately, everybody you're trying to connect with, willing to share your passions, your intimacy, your vulnerability, all of those things, you're like, I heard Keith and we're ready to go do it. I'm going to walk out and connect with people. And guess what? They're on their Blackberries, they're going 1,000 miles a minute, they don't have time for you, they got to go deal with the kids, right? Just because you get it doesn't mean they do. What you do is you use generosity to arrest their attention. Wait, thank you very much. So the sincere flattery, the lipstick, how beautiful that is, the hair and how beautiful that is. Looking into somebody and say, I care. And then finding that sincere flattery, that connectivity point that you have. But we're going to talk about all the levels of generosity, but constantly being generous. And this is the great thing. Generosity and vulnerability, they work hand in hand and they keep giving each other permission. You lead with generosity. And then somebody was like, wow, thank you. And then that gives you permission to have a little bit of a conversation and connect in a real way, in an authentic way. And the more information you gain, the more generous you can become. Does this make sense to you? It's a beautiful cycle. Giving more permission to grow close, learning more, being only able to give more, learning more to be able to give more. We talked about 4 words, right? We talked about vulnerability. We talked about generosity. All great relationships, the great ones, and unfortunately most of us don't have enough great ones. The great relationships are defined by candor. All of the information that you need in order to process and be successful in your life, most of that information is sitting right around you. We as humans have a very, very powerful mechanism in our lives to make sure that we're more successful than we could ever imagine, and it's called feedback. But most of us hide from feedback. Most of us don't want to hear the truth. And therefore we surround ourselves with people who will definitely not tell us the truth. If you want to be great, darn it, you need to hear the truth. There are people sitting in this room right now that are only half as great as they could be. And you know it. And it's your fault for not telling them, as much as it's their fault for not wanting to hear it. Particularly if you care about them. Here's what gives you permission to be candid. That intimacy, your own vulnerability, and delivering it from a place of generosity. You understand that? You know, it's like, Nancy, I care so much about your success. You know, I've gotten to know you so... I don't know Nancy, by the way. But I've gotten to know you now for a year. And I've got to tell you something. I know that you can achieve more if you'll just hear this one thing. Do you want to hear it? Now, you've asked permission. Most people would be like, yes. You got to find your right time, your right movement, etc. But I guarantee you, I got to tell you something. This organization would be transformed if you began to understand and embrace caring criticism. And that's the final word, accountability. accountability. The people that you care about the most should be holding you accountable to achieve the dreams and the destiny that you want to achieve. How frustrating is it when you see somebody come into your groups with great promise and then they let themselves down? Our job is to hold people accountable to be great. But we've got to get permission to do that. You've got to get permission to give somebody tough love. You've got to get permission to be candid. You've got to get permission to badger someone. Otherwise, it feels like terrorism. And there are some organizations that jump straight from nice, which, by the way, does not mean effective. Nice very often does not mean candid. Nice often means that we have a meeting and then we go in the other room and have the conversations behind the backs of the people in the meeting. That's most organizations. That is not effective. That's frankly not even moral from my perspective. So what we're going to try to achieve is enough transparency in our lives and the organizations that each of you is sitting back saying, I care enough about you sometimes to hold you accountable for what you said you were going to do. And I hold you accountable enough that I'm going to be candid and tell you when I think you're letting yourself down, because you know I love you, because you know I care, because you know I'm there for you and I have your back. I think we all deserve to push a little harder on preserving and creating the kind of strength of relationships around us. We're just so quick to give up. So if I get you all to believe that every relationship is your responsibility, the safe place is your responsibility, whether you're giving somebody candid feedback, your job is to make them feel safe to receive it by letting them know how much you care and how authentic that feedback is and how of service that feedback is to them. And I actually think that conflict avoidance, people who are afraid of conflict, it's rampant in our society, it's rampant in our houses. It stops people from being able to say to another person, that disappointed me, you disappointed me. And that kind of conflict avoidance doesn't serve you well. So there's this terrible construct where you're not inviting people in, people are naturally not revealing information to you, so you all stand around in the dark and you live your lives more mediocre than you deserve to. You've got to open up and you've got to make people feel safe to give information, and you've got to make people feel safe and cared for when you're delivering it. It's your responsibility. And if we can create that environment at these tables, then we can say to each other, hey, I want to make you successful. And all of a sudden we can begin to have the candor and the feedback that starts to change your lives and starts to tap in to the information that's out there that helps you figure out what you can really do to be powerful and great than you are today. I want you to remember what it was like to have somebody who had your back. Like, really. Or what it was like were you ever a part of a team that you really connected with in your life? Maybe it was a sports team. Maybe it was a school class. Maybe it was a singing group. Maybe it was a religious group. Maybe it was here at Avon. Or maybe it was a family member. I just wanted you to remember, I want you to talk about what were the attributes? What were the attributes of that, and how did they come to life in your life? Because what I want you to know is what I'm asking you to do isn't impossible, and most of you have experienced it at some point in your life already. But most of you believe that to experience this amazing type of a relationship, that it's accidental, it's serendipitous, it's only chemistry that can make it happen. And that, yes, lo and behold, I'll bump in and fall into this relationship or this team, and the next thing I know, it's powerful and it's wonderful. But then I go out into the rest of the world, and I go and I create these transactional relationships after that, and hope someday I'll fall back into one of those others. No, you don't have to. It can be on purpose. You can take into the control of your own life to develop that kind of depth of relationship. It's a choice. It's It's a choice that you make for yourself. It's a choice that you make to let your guards down. It's a choice that you make to invite people in. It's a choice that you make to sustain a safe place around you when that other person is pulling their hand back. You're going to reach out and you're going to hold onto their hand because you care enough to. And by the way, it's good for you too because you want to have that connection. You're not just doing it of service, you're doing it for you in your life. We've got to find ourselves committed to each other that way, and we've had it in the past. And I promise you, just because you're purposeful does not mean that you're not authentic. Some of you are thinking, well, I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this on purpose. That's not authentic. That's not real. That's fake. No, it's not. Just because it's on purpose doesn't mean that it's fake. It's where it comes from here. When you met the love of your life and you saw them in at a party or a bar or wherever it was, and you looked at that individual and you connected with them in some way, you began a very strategic and purposeful process. Once again, there's two components. When I say everything that you need to be successful is sitting right around you, part of that is emotionally, right? Just the fact that there are people who really want to help you, that are right around you, the people who pick you up, who will tell you the truth, who will kick you in the butt when you need it, all that kind of good stuff. By the way, that little exercise that you just talked about, having resonated to that time when you connected in the past, if you did, what I want you to realize is that feeling, that connectivity, you can have again if you choose it. And I'm going to ask you to please choose that this team that you're sitting with at this table is the first start. Now, some of you are sitting back saying, this is going to be tough. Others of you are already there, and others of you are thinking, wow, I never thought of that before. So I understand there's the whole spectrum of feelings to turning the people around you into that kind of team. But please, don't trust me, trust you. Trust what it felt like from that first introduction that you had with somebody to that third one. And what it felt like to trust and connect and to look into someone's eyes and care because you chose to do so. It's amazing what you can choose to do and have in your life. So that can happen here too. So what I want you to do is with this team, with this group, with this success group, I want you to just now create something called a collaborative brainstorm, collaborative problem solving. Now, there are a couple of rules around collaborative problem solving. One of them is you want to make sure that everybody feels respected. It doesn't mean, by the way, you have to agree with everybody. This is all new stuff for you, and I'm not suggesting that it's going to feel perfect or it's going to work. But just because somebody says something, if it sounds stupid, you could easily think, boy, that was stupid. Or, what I've often found is sometimes when something sounds stupid, it was just stupid, all right? And I say stupid stuff all the time because I take a lot of risks. I put myself out there and I brainstorm and I don't mind. I'm like, well, what about this? Or what about this? Sometimes it just isn't a good idea. Okay, fine. But I know that the people around me respect me, all right? I won't take those risks when I don't know that people respect me. What you need to do is you need to get to the stage where the group respects each other. There's a whole section in the book about how to have a healthy argument and how to do what we call sparring. By healthily fighting with somebody, you can actually get to greatness in good ideas. So check your heart and then take a risk. Check your heart and take a risk. I believe that all of us, the best thing about this process of working in a team this way is that all of you have instincts that will supercharge you and make you so successful if you would ever actually learn to trust them. Could you imagine a meeting where everything that you need to say is actually out there on the table in a healthy way, where you don't have to get your blood pressure up to say that you disagree, where you don't have to leave the meeting and talk behind people's backs just so that you have your voice, where you feel like rejuvenated and excited because everybody has grown as a result of it, God, that's the life I want to live. Now, my last book, Never Eat Alone, which the divisions have all gotten, there's a chapter in it called pinging. Pinging. Now, many of you say you don't have time to deepen relationships with people. You don't have time to stay and actually have the long, slow dinners and the lunches and whatever. And I understand that. I got to tell you, what a heartfelt email does for somebody is very powerful. There is a reason why the first chapter of this book starts out telling a story about Jean Nidich. Jean Nidich, who's the founder of Weight Watchers, years ago realized, I've heard her tell this story, years ago realized that she tried weight loss program after weight loss program after weight loss program. And finally, there was a program that the city of New York was doing, and she tried to get her girlfriends from Queens to go do it with her. But they were like, I'm not schlepping my whole way into New York. You go and come back and tell us about it. So she went in, and then she'd come back, and in her living room, she would tell the people about the diet. So what was powerful was not the diet. What was powerful is her and her girlfriend sitting in her living room, holding each other accountable and learning together and growing together. And it's so simple to ignite that in your life. And again, it just started with the ordinary, like a team meeting in someone's living room, or a woman deciding she's going to diet together, and now that's Weight Watchers. The power of the group. I actually will have dinner parties, and I'll say, the purpose of tonight's dinner is to be helpful to each other. Now let's figure out how. And that really transforms a dinner. It really does. Some people are in great jobs that they're excited and they want to grow more, and we can talk about that. Others are people who were really in professions that they're not excited about, and we can talk about that. Others are unemployed and they're looking for opportunities. We can talk about that. But the ability to just say to each other, how do we help each other? It's so powerful. Imagine two people who you were going to invest to deepen that relationship. And let me explain to you for a moment what this 2, 3, 4, 5 is, all right? Part of the process that someday you'll actually see it in the book. We say that all relationships can be kind of measured. I know what a 5 is. A 5 is somebody that I have refrigerator rights with. Refrigerator rights is I walk into their home, and if I don't even think about it, I go over to the fridge and I can open it up and help myself to an orange juice if I want. All right? That's refrigerator rights. Now, a 0 is I don't know you yet. All right? A 1, like we're kind of aware of each other. Like maybe some of the people you see at church, but you don't even know their names, basically, you know? A 2 is somebody that you know them, you say hello, that's about it. A 3 is an acquaintance. An acquaintance sometimes, interestingly enough, an acquaintance is sometimes what people call friends at work. Meaning, or the other way around, I should say. It's what sometimes people call, when somebody says, oh, that's a friend of mine, what they really mean it's acquaintance. Because they're really not your friend, because you don't even know any of their dreams, you don't know their aspirations, you don't know what they're afraid of, you don't know anything. But yet you call them a friend because we throw that word around a lot. But they're probably a 3. A friend is a friend, like a really good, solid friend. People you have in your home, you entertain collectively with your spouses, and you understand you care about them, all right? That's a 4. So you see what I'm saying? What I'm saying is there's some people in your life right now that are 2s and 3s that I want them to be 4s and 5s. And I want you to choose, because you care enough, to move 2 people from a 2 or a 3 to a 4 or 5. And I want you to go make that commitment and be able to come back and say, I did it. Or at least I tried and I made the valiant attempt. Take that form that you have in front of you then. And in the bottom right, I want you to commit to 2 people today that you're going to begin to attempt to enlist as a part of your 3. 2 individuals who are going to be your accountability buddies. Who are these individuals? And what you need to do is in 2 weeks from now, before May 5th, you need to commit that these individuals, that you will have another conversation about today. And about the commitments that you just wrote down on that paper, about your commitments to move some people from a 2 to a 5 or a 2 to a 4. Your commitments to begin pinging and just reaching out to somebody and touch them. Who are those Who are those two individuals? What commitments are you going to make? And if you don't know yet, and you have to create some better relationships around you, then put somebody you're going to try with it. I wanted to end with one story, just one story that I use when I want to reach inside and get a little bit of courage. When I was 8 years old, my pop was unemployed for 6 months. And I'm sure many of us have faced that situation in the past, but being unemployed for 6 months in Pittsburgh at the time, when the whole steel industry was crumbling and there was really no hope of jobs coming to the city anytime in the near term, was pretty tough. And at this stage, in fact, when my pop passed away, we had $5,000 to bury him with. He had no savings. When he was hired back after that 6 months, he had worked for this company for 25 years. When he was hired back, they erased all of his pension and they made him a new man because he was out for 6 months. It was one of my bosses at the time, because I was a kid laden with tons of school debt. It was one of my bosses that paid for my pop's funeral because we couldn't afford to do it. Talk about intimacy with the people that we work with. It's always been a part of my life, and that's why I want you all to have that in yours as well. But back then, I was 8 years old, and we were all happy. Despite the fact that we were unemployed, we were healthy, which is what really mattered. And there's a little market. I don't know if you guys know Delillo's Market. So Delillo's Market is this authentic Italian market where everybody would go and they would get their olives and olive oil and fresh bread and stuff. Dad and I used to go there every Saturday, and that was part of our little journey together. And on the way home, we'd always stop along the side of the road, just the two of us. And we'd eat a little slice of pepperoni. Well, it was a little bigger than a little slice. It was like half a stick of pepperoni. And a half a loaf of a fresh-smelling, warm Italian bread. And that's because Mom never let us eat that crap at home. So we'd sit there and we'd eat that. But that's where Dad taught me. You know, those little moments in our lives, those little moments where we choose to sit with somebody, and it doesn't matter how fancy your home is or how intimate your whatever is, it's about the connection points and the authenticity. And it's so much of my learning didn't happen from some fancy school. It happened sitting there on the front seat with my dad talking about life. And we can all have those kind of moments. So Dad and I were sitting there, we were chatting away, and up to the side of the road, it was around November, and up on the side of the road, there was a pile of trash. And in that pile of trash, there was a big wheel. It's one of those three-wheel plastic toy things, you know what I'm talking about? It's something that I had wanted for Christmas. But it was pretty clear back then that we weren't going to be able to afford a lot of Christmas presents. Dad was a very proud man, but he was so proud that he wanted to make sure that more than anything, he took care of his family. And I'm not talking about the kind of proud that's embarrassed about not having. I'm talking about the kind of proud that knows at his core of his soul that he's a great man. And it doesn't matter what the economic situation is. So he got out of the car and he walked over, and he didn't just pick up the big wheel and put it in the car. He walked up the sidewalk with the big wheel in his hand to ask whether he could have this big wheel. Now, what do you think's going through his head? You know? I mean, it could have been easy to be feeling embarrassed or whatever, and here's his son, you know? His son's like hiding in the back seat of the car, embarrassed that one of my snooty friends from school are going to go by and tease me for the rest of the week for picking up trash. But Dad's up there knocking on the door, asking for this big wheel, and I'm sitting there and I'm peeking up, and I see the woman. She's like, you know, she's Italian, of course. She's waving her arms around. She's like, of course you can have the big wheel. My grandkids have moved away, and we've got other things too. Wait a second. And she goes into the garage, and she pulls out a bicycle. Now at this point, I'm out of the car and I'm walking up the sidewalk. And the woman sees me, and you can tell that she goes into the garage, and she pulls the garage door up, and she says, "Sir, I know that this may not be appropriate, but can I give this go-kart to your son for Christmas?" I mean, I thought I had the best Christmas ever. But to this very day, when I go home to visit my mom, I always go by that old Victorian house, big old gray house. And I go to remind myself of the lesson that I learned that day. By the way, I didn't learn the lesson of audacity that day. My dad taught me that every day. He used to say to me all the time, don't be afraid to ask. The worst anybody could ever say is no. It's a great lesson for all of us to learn that to claim your destiny and the things we want to achieve, we have to take risks in life. But that's what life's about, to live at its fullest. But the lesson that I learned that day was the lesson that I learned from that woman who got such joy, I could tell, from having been able to help that family, ours, at Christmas. And I sit there, and I always close my eyes, and I think about how that woman must have felt. Just imagine if you're her, Christmas Eve maybe, this is November, you're doing your dishes at the sink. Grandkids might be visiting and they're tucked away and you got to wrap some presents. And you're thinking about that family and that little boy in the back seat of the car who came out and that family that you helped. And then I realized something that's so difficult for me sometimes to realize, and that is that the greatest gift that was given that Christmas was not the gift of her to me. It was the gift that she gave herself. And it was the gift that my father, with his audacity and his courage, gave her. The ability to help. How would you have felt if you were that woman being able to help that family so easily? There are people sitting at your table who don't know you and don't yet care. But if each of you makes a choice to begin to let some people in, perhaps starting right here and tonight, that your lives would be transformed, as would theirs. There are family members that you have that would like to be closer and are just waiting for you to give that permission to invite them in. There are people you haven't even met yet, who you've been put on this earth to serve. And you won't be able to if you don't get out of your own way enough to invite people in. And I just pray that all of you begin tonight and take that to the people around you. Let other people help you be successful as well. Good luck, and God bless.
What do we think of Keith, huh? You like him, huh?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
What do we think of Keith Ferrazzi?
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.